Okay, great. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Firebrand Sprints, an overview of the new networking apprenticeships delivered by Richard Cottam. My name is Phoebe Savidis. I am the Content Marketing Manager at Firebrand Training, and I have been supporting the curation of the webinars and advanced accelerated courses that Firebrand Sprint offer. I'm just going to provide an introduction of what is to be expected today and a couple of housekeeping rules. So this morning's delivery will be on the new networking apprenticeships. We will be delivering sprints for all of the new technology suites this week and next. Tomorrow's is on cybersecurity apprenticeships, and next week will be on data and software. Firebrand Training are nationally renowned for delivering top quality apprenticeships, whether it's to yourself as an individual or getting your team certified. So please make sure to get in touch if you're interested at all. Today's sprint is delivered by subject matter expert Richard Cottam, who is in charge of our infrastructure technology suite at Firebrand Training. So we're delighted to have him here today to let us know all there is to know about the new apprenticeships.
Thank you very much.
Regarding itinerary and a couple of housekeeping rules, if everyone could please stay on mute. There is a recording of this, so it is up to you whether you have your video switched on or off, but I recommend you have them switched off during the presentation. Regarding the chat room, if everyone could please make sure to direct your questions and conversation to the everyone option in the group. Richard is kindly very open to you asking questions during the presentation. However, we will have a Q&A at the end, so I would recommend you leave your most pressing questions till then. There will be a recording of this sprint. If you would like a copy of the recording, please get in touch and I will send it to you in a follow-up email. This is only an hour-long webinar, so there will be no breaks. And on that note, I'll go on mute and stop my video, and over to you, Richard.
Thank you very much. A gracious introduction there. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. Hope you're all well. Hope you're all safe. Yes, as I said, I'm one of the SMEs team that we have here at Firebrand, and predominantly I look after the infrastructure side, which in this networking area that we're looking at of apprenticeship standards, it's primarily going to focus on the brand new Level 3 Information Communication Technician, launched as of Star Wars Day, May the 4th. And then the Level 4 Network Engineer. Now, the Level 4 Network Engineer is a revised standard, as I'm sure some of you are aware. And the expected launch date for that is going to be the 1st of June. So we're almost there. So there are chances that maybe the standard could change ever so slightly from what I'm going to be delivering to you, but pretty much we think we're on the right ball with that one. So thank you very much for joining. I'll tackle the level 3 first and then the level 4, but a little bit of background why Firebrand are into apprenticeships and what makes us pretty much one of the best, if not the best, in the digital genre. So we've started Firebrand Apprenticeships, not a many moons ago, but we managed to get it started from such a good background of having this kind of feedback. So for example, Digital Provider of the Year, quite an accolade to have. We're top 20 constantly in the training provider companies worldwide, and has been, as you see, it's been running for 5 years, and we're really up there with the top of the providers that you can get in the IT industry. And that's why Firebrand has a bit of a niche compared to some other digital apprenticeship providers. Firebrand, if you've been on our website and had a visit, you'll see we're a huge commercial digital training company, and we train thousands and thousands and thousands of different programs and people and clients throughout the various years that we've been running. So we've got a wealth of experience. All of our trainers from the commercial side have been delivering and are world class in their subjects. We, of course, then will bring them over to help with delivering with the apprenticeship side. What that means is, fantastically, you can have the opportunity for an apprentice to be sat training if they visit our facilities in Boston, or via a webinar, as we're having to do with COVID restrictions at the moment for some of us. what we get that is fantastic exposure that apprentices can rub shoulders with people that maybe have been in industry for quite some time and share that experience. So that kind of hidden experience can be shared within a classroom environment, which really helps bring up the level of experience that you get within the classroom and exposure in some of the topics. So we've trained over 1 million people since 2001. For the Ofsted people amongst you, we are Ofsted grade good, which is grade 2, which that's on the education inspection framework, which is fantastic to get. Trust me, that's an amazing accolade to get. And in one of those categories with behaviours, we're actually ranked as outstanding, and nobody else in the digital spectrum can actually boast that at the moment. So we're doing brilliantly with regards our Ofsted results that we've had. Of course, like many others, we had Ofsted come in whilst we were in the midst of the pandemic to see how we were coping and supporting apprentices when we can't actually always get out and go and see them. And again, they've given us great praise for our efforts and the quality of work that we do there. And that can be gleaned off of Ofsted's website, of course. With regards to our pass rates, it's an 87% pass rate across all apprenticeship standards. However, the boast part comes in here, and this is publicly accessible information. The British Computer Society, one of the independent endpoint assessment organisations that are out there, who we work an awful lot with, I've published that we, as a provider that provides an array of digital standards, we offer to our clients the highest distinction achievement rates compared to any of their other providers that offer as many standards as we do. So that is really something we are immensely proud of. But don't just take our word for it. As you can see, I've taken a little snip there from our Trustpilot. It's on our website, at the bottom of the website. You can see we constantly get glowing references to the quality of delivery in our apprenticeships, as well as the commercial training that we have. So that's a little bit about us, just to kind of say, hi, we're Firebrand, this is where we're at, and the serious nature of quality that we put forward. So who do we work with then? If we're that good, we must work with some really big names. And here is just literally a handful of the big names that we work with. In my particular area, networking, cyber, as you can imagine, we've got Lloyd's, BT, obviously a massive networking company, Citrix, and there are far more than we could possibly fit on this particular slide. And this is just a selection. And with the NHS there, we do work with them, and a big shout out to them for all the efforts they've been doing recently for everybody as well. So we offer an awful lot of standards. There's about 21 flavors, if you would. Some of them have options within standards across level 3s and level 4s, and we do have level 6 and level 7 standards on their way as well. So we will be truly offering a progression for apprentices. Your colleagues that are learning, they can learn from a level 3 through level 4, up through to degree, up to a level 7. And in some instances, that's a fantastic arc to have, the ability to stay on your apprenticeship and go from starting a company possibly up to maybe managing your own team, which is fantastic. Now, the two particular standards that we're going to focus on, as I mentioned today, are the infrastructure technician at level 3, a new standard, and the network engineer. So let's dive into the first one, the infrastructure technician. Now, you may be aware of the existing standard that is out there, the infrastructure technician level 3. Now, infrastructure technician level 3, you can still sign up for until July. There is a bit of a crossover period, so that is still out there. But that will be, if we mirror across to the other side of the slide, that will be replaced by the information communication technician option 1, support technician. Now, what we've noticed here is there's various options. We have currently the infrastructure technician level 3. The network technician level 3 was in design. It didn't come to light, but it was in design. And then we had the unified communications technician, good for all those people like my colleagues at BT, you know, that were in the unified comms industry, Virgin and Vodafone as well, that we work with. Those standards went through a digital review recently and have been changed, modified, updated, as things do when they have a review. And I'm really confident that we've got some cracking new standards that we have to use. So the first one, the information communication technician, option 1, support technician, almost, is designed, you could say, to replace the infrastructure technician. The network technician is there as in option 2 to replace what would have been the standalone network technician on its own. And then option 3, digital communications technician, will replace the unified communications technician. So a slight change in the title there. But they're referred to as options because on a lot of the new standards, they are designed that if there is a core amount of knowledge, skills and behavior that all, in this instance, 3 options would have, that's how this standard has been designed. So there's a core amount of knowledge that regardless of what option an apprentice would be on, they would learn that core knowledge, and then they would have their top up for their option element. And the skills that they would have to show evidence for in the workplace that they're competent will of course be lent towards the support technician, the network technician, or the digital comms technician. So what is a level 3 information communication technician? Well, I have my ideas, you have your ideas, everybody will have their own opinion. But the people that put the standard together, IFATE, this is what they put down as what an occupational profile would be for an ICT apprentice on level 3. So I'll just give you a few seconds to have a read through that. There are 2 slides, forgive the wordy slides, but it's a copy and paste direct from IFATE. And again, if anybody at any point wants to unmute their mic and ask a question, please by all means do so. If not, of course, you can just pop questions into the chat facility, point it to everyone, and then we will review those slightly later. Thanks for that. So that's the first slide. Hopefully you've had enough time to read that one. The second, okie dokie. Now, one of the first things people like to ask is, great, so what do we learn? And I'm going to show you a little heads up of how we would structure the learning element and the delivery, a small journey, if you would, as to how we would go through the program of ICT at Firebrand. But although we've just looked at the occupational profile, I find it incredibly poignant at this time to highlight to everybody that the new standards have been written with a list of what is referred to as duties. Now, these duties, as they are called, are very much the roles and responsibilities you would expect an apprentice to be completing. Now, IFATE's website lists these duties, and we have core duties to start with. Those, as I mentioned, that every apprentice, regardless of what standard they are on, would be expected to be completing these duties. Now, the reason why they'd be expected to be completing these type of duties is because they are linked to what criteria we have on the right: knowledge, skills, and behavior criteria. This is the crux, the criteria, the crux of the apprenticeship that the apprentices need to learn, demonstrate, have knowledge and apply knowledge, and behave in certain ways and communicate in certain ways as well. Now, these duties, I cannot stress the importance of them enough. If you're wondering, well, would I have a suitable apprentice? Would I have a suitable role for an apprentice? I would encourage everybody to go to the instituteforapprenticeships.org website and have a look for the new level 3 information comms technician standard. And you will find this document. With that said, these duties are listed solely here for core. They do have more duties, of course, when it comes to those options that I showed you earlier. So the support technician has a list of additional duties. view on screen there. And we'll have a little look further at these in a short while. But each option has not only the core to become, each apprentice not only has the core options to be completed in the duties, but the options themselves have their earners listed. So there's a few more there for the network technician, and last but by no means least, a few more there for the digital communications technician. That's the option that's replacing the unified communications technician level 3 standard. So we have a list of knowledge, skills and behaviors that are cross-mapped to these duties. Now, if you do a role suitability, you think, oh my word, well, this role that I'm putting together, there's just one duty that potentially I can't do with my apprentices. I'm not going to get the exposure. What we would encourage you to then do is have a look at the knowledge, skills and behaviors that are involved. And as you can see, just in this example here, 37 in knowledge is used in multiple duties. So although you may not be able to do that specific duty, have a deep dive to whether or not you will be meeting the needs of the apprenticeship standard to hit these knowledge, skills and behaviors across other duties to help you put together that role suitability. The knowledge, skills and behaviors are also listed on the sheet, so you don't have to memorize everything, it's all there. And there are quite a substantial list of knowledge that has to be learnt by an apprentice. You know, it's tough being an apprentice nowadays. You know, the IT industry is a ever-changing, rapid industry, and we need to know an awful lot, and we need to know the latest versions of everything that's happening just to make sure we can maintain our current knowledge. So the knowledge that is delivered from Firebrand, of course, is right up there with the latest and greatest, as you would expect. Likewise, our learning mentors help the apprentices when they're in the workplace demonstrate their skills within the workplace, as will be required at the end of the apprenticeship. So a little seed of thought there. You will need to prove your skills on your apprenticeship, and I'll show you how that's done in a moment. So if I go back to the presentation, what a lot of people are like, well, what am I going to learn? What's it going to look like? This is a rough idea, rough layout of what you will be learning. So in the first 0 to 3 months, you'll be studying both remote with pre-learning and e-learning for the CompTIA A+ Core 1. Now, the new digital standards after the review no longer have the need for vendor certification. Knowledge modules that we used to have in older qualifications have now gone. There is no need to have them because assessment solely takes place now in the endpoint assessment area, which is right, as you can see on this graphic, around month 14 to 16. So, of course, we would be remiss to not, of course, check people's knowledge as we go through. So we will be delivering some e-learning with the apprentice. We will then have workshops. So if you can get into iBoss, into our fantastic facilities, we would encourage you to come in there. It's completely COVID safe. The NHS and police have been using our training facilities. So of course you would imagine them to be completely COVID safe as you would expect. But if not, we deliver via oil-based training as well. So that's online instructor-led, plus a hybrid nature whereby there may be an instructor in a classroom delivering to some people in the classroom. And you, for example, may be joining that classroom via a webinar. We have cameras that follow the trainer around the classroom. So even when the trainer's writing something up on the traditional whiteboard, you'll be able to see everything that's put together. So those workshops covered. Once those workshops are covered, those skills and knowledge that the apprentice would have gleaned from those first 3 months of training and being within the workplace, the apprentices will have a project set for them to collect evidence and build a bit of a portfolio of evidence of what work they are completing within the workplace. Now, again, unlike the old standards where the portfolio of evidence was holistically required and it was marked by the independent endpoint assessment organization, interestingly, although we still require a portfolio, it is no longer marked by the independent endpoint assessment organization. So you may think, well, what's the point then if they don't mark it? Well, it's actually an incredibly important document now, because when we come to the end point assessment of this particular standard and some of the others, the apprentices will be having a professional discussion with an independent endpoint assessor. Now, this professional discussion will be based off the evidence that has been collected in the portfolio. So it will be unique to each apprentice based off what evidence is gleaned. Of course, it will be asking questions around the criteria, the knowledge, skills and behaviours that are expected to come out of the portfolio. But it's based off what the apprentice submits and the discussion that is had. The portfolio, the official term is, simply underpins that professional discussion. So that will be the go-to guide for any discussion. So the apprentices will make that evidence collection as they work their way through. And as you can see, we have a bit of a rinse and repeat pattern. So we'll do the first half of CompTIA A+, then the second half, Core 2, with an introduction, e-learning, training via OIL or in the workshop, and an assessment. Now, we will be assessing the apprentices throughout, and they will get the opportunity to sit the official exam, which is of course a fantastic opportunity to have. The exam will be included when an apprentice signs up for the apprenticeship. You get one free shot at the exam included in the apprenticeship. Now, I say included in the apprenticeship, it's an offer that Firebrand give. The price for the examination will not be coming out of your levy. It's just included in the offer that we have, because of course, with the levy and the funding regulations, you can no longer pay for your certificates out of or your exams for certificates out of your levy pot. You can simply only pay for the training. But we're still going to give it, because by golly, we're a huge digital training company. We know that the industry loves certificates, so we're going to include it. So we have the CompTIA Core 1, Core 2. That's a fantastic, phenomenal grounding, entry-level knowledge qualification for all people entering apprenticeships and the digital world at large. It covers everything from software, hardware, even has printers. Who still use printers? I don't know. Even still has elements of printers within there as well as networking, cloud-based technologies, from the cabling, Wi-Fi. It's a broad-reaching topic that's a great foundation of knowledge for anybody entering our industry. Of course, a lot of what we do nowadays is cloud bias. You know, whether it's your software-defined networks, and everybody that's using AWS and Azure will know what I mean here. Not everybody uses the physical networking anymore. So what we've done is we've added in the CompTIA Cloud Essentials Plus. Now, this is a great qualification for that introduction to cloud technologies and the methodology around when you would use cloud versus physical, etc. So again, same pattern: introduction, e-learning, workshop, projects based on the evidence that you should be able to collect at that point. That said, that's an awful lot on the top row of technical knowledge. The standard simply isn't just about technical knowledge. We have that customer relations aspect as well. We have that ability to record our tickets, to support people how we need to. So at Firebrand, we have our IT systems management and business processes in-house course that has been created. And that really does help lift that knowledge, but also give examples of those skills to be used within the workplace as well. Same pattern: introduction, pre-reading, workshop. Then when we get to month 13, we will be finalizing your portfolio of evidence. If you're an apprentice, you know, this is your opportunity to showcase how great you are. So this is where you will be collecting the best, the very best work that you've completed throughout your apprenticeship up to that point. Once you've done that, you'll be then ready to enter through Gateway into your endpoint assessment. So quick recap then about this structure. Here's an example. For your foundation study, you'd go through an introduction on expectations would be laid before you. Then we'd have a passage of e-learning. We work well with the CertMaster Learn and Learn on Demand Labs platform. We're fully aware that not everybody has access to kit to be able to pull a server down. Maybe some apprentices for example, now are still struggling to get into certain workplaces because of COVID restrictions, the labs enable you in a safe way to log onto a website, have a play with a Windows server, Linux server, even Apple devices. And if you break them, it doesn't matter. It's a safe lab environment virtualization, as again, I say, using Learn on Demand labs. We'll have an assessment for that milestone to check how you're progressing as you go through. You'll then collect evidence projects. We put together a guide for you on projects of what evidence you need to collect if you're an apprentice, how you could possibly collect it, and the types of evidence that are there to be had. Not everybody has to write everything up, of course. That's an old-fashioned way of thinking about things realistically. We need to embrace our technology nowadays. So, taking photos with cameras, little video clips of what you're doing, that's brilliant evidence as well. So once you've completed all that portfolio, you've gone through your body of learning, you've attended, you've passed all your milestones that you require, and you go into that EPA area. We've gone through gateway into EPA, as I mentioned. What we have on this standard are two particular methods of assessment. So the first, I mentioned earlier, that portfolio of evidence is used to underpin a professional discussion. So it will last approximately an hour, and that's give or take. If you require additional time, that can be arranged and discussed when you get towards that end of your apprenticeship. There will be typically a minimum of 10 open questions. Now, those open questions are going to be around what has been submitted within your portfolio of evidence. We offer a guide, as I mentioned earlier, of what knowledge, skills and behaviours you need to pop in or need to be aiming to pop into that portfolio of evidence. So you should be well prepared, well prepared before this point of this discussion, this professional discussion. The second element, the project report with questioning, is quite similar to what apprentices will have been doing in their portfolio. They will have been completing a work-based project and all relevant to the workplace, no simulation, good quality work that people need in the workplace. The apprentices will have been involved with that. But when it comes to the assessment method 2, or AM2, as you may see it in some literature, the project report that the apprentices have to write up needs to be completed within a frame window, in this instance, a maximum of 4 weeks. Now, I just want to give everybody a little warning here. There will be a list of knowledge, skills and behaviour criteria that in assessment method 2, apprentices will need to get the exposure in the workplace to be able to collect evidence on good jobs that they're working on towards those knowledge, skills and behaviour criteria required specifically for assessment method 2. Now, with such a relatively small window of 4 weeks to fit that in, we're going to have to plan a little bit of logistics beforehand. Well, before we get to Gateway, we really need to know that we're going to have the opportunity between us to allow apprentices to meet that. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, like most apprenticeship standards, we have tri-party reviews throughout the apprenticeship with the line managers, a representative learning mentor from Firebrand, and of course the apprentice themselves. And we will be focusing and discussing throughout all these tri-party meetings what evidence we need to be collecting and when we need to be collecting it. You'll be supported from start to finish and beyond on your apprenticeship. Absolutely, without a doubt, some of the best support you're going to get in the industry. Slightly biased, but there you go. To enable you to do that, and our distinction rates speak for themselves on that one. Now, the second element, then, the project that will be written up, again, similarly, whether it be with projects written up in the portfolio or a project written up in the 4-week window there, the apprentices will then have questions around that evidence that has been submitted. In this instance, it's slightly smaller, just been the one project that they're going to be writing up, 30 minutes long, minimum of 5 open questions about the KSPs required for that project. Once that's completed, the endpoint assessment organization will go away, they'll compile everything, they'll put reports together, and they will give you your grade for your apprenticeship. Now, that grade can be a pass, a merit, or a distinction. or potentially you may be referred. And if you are referred, if there's something that's not quite right, maybe the report, you weren't able to hit all those KSPs for some particular reason, that may be filled in the questioning, but if not, you will be referred, and we have resits and retake policies that you will be informed of if that ever requires. So that essentially is how you will be officially assessed for the level 3 ICT apprenticeship. Now, some titles that have been given for who would suit this apprenticeship then are as follows: help desk support. Help desk support could come under the support technician. So this is the support technician. First line support, even second line, I think it's fair to say. That's for the support technician. When it goes with a network technician, which is option 2, here are some titles that are listed. And then for communications technician, here are a few more titles. Now, just to give you a balanced expectation on those duties that I mentioned earlier, if you're thinking, right, this is now something that I'm interested in, so those duties, let's put a role together perhaps for an apprentice. There is a rough guide out there of how many off-the-job days it would take on average for somebody to be competent in each one of those duties. Like I said, each one of these duties contains a cross map to lots of knowledge, skills and behaviors within them. So this is a rough guide. Now, if you're new to business, it may take you slightly longer. If you are an existing person within the business that has a little bit of experience, but not the significant amount of required skills that you need to go on an apprenticeship, so you've had a little bit of information beforehand, it may not take you quite as long. But if you're a manager popping a role together, here's just a guide for you, as typically the people that have put the standard together, the Trailblazer group for this standard, guesstimate it would take for somebody to become competent within those duties whilst on their apprenticeship. So the 9 on screen are the core. So regardless of option 1, 2 or 3, every apprentice would be aiming to complete these duties. Everything from working with customers, both internal or external, down to documenting and escalating anything that's needed. So with documenting, of course, we have those behavioral skills and those communication skills within being able to document accurately and respond to customers accurately as well. So let's just have a quick look at the optional ones though, and I want to just really focus your attention on some that have been highlighted as potential problems going forward if you can't grant exposure for apprentices. It's something to just make you aware of, that you'll need to do it. So if you're putting a role suitability together, have a little thing, oh wow, we don't do that, but maybe the next team do in the next office. And sometimes having an apprentice go to the next team, or if you're in a big open plan floor, the next desk or whatever, and speak to other teams and work with those other teams to be able to get a little bit of secondment over there. It's fantastic. It makes the greatest employer of empathy when they know what the other team has to go through. So installing and configuring relevant software appropriate, for example, mobile apps, printers, projector, scanners. So if you're doing a support role, you are still going to need to install and configure software and hardware. So bear in mind, if you've got somebody on a service desk where they get to remote in and maybe work with software, they're still going to need to have the opportunity to evidence hardware. Likewise, they're also going to need to have exposure to administer security. Now, you'll see with all the new standards that cloud and security has increased in importance across the standards. Quite rightly so, of course. Everybody over the past year has all experienced the new facility of working from home digitally, whether they're used to or not. We need to support those people, and not everybody will be savvy that we're supporting with security. So we need to up our knowledge if we are going to be an apprentice that is supplying security knowledge to our clients, internal or external. We need to be able to help with that. And of course, last but by no means, rolling out upgrades or new systems or applications. So getting hands on, not just supporting, but also the upgrade of new kit and rollout of new kit as well. Network technician will have to work with cabling. almost a given, really, isn't it, if you work with cabling. Administer mobile devices, however, may be a little tricky and not something that you would always do. However, for the apprenticeship standard, we do need to have apprentices getting exposure on these particular duties. Security, again, important, and again, working and configuring with software. But thankfully, you know, you've got to take in the new concepts that we have in apprenticeship world, not necessarily the industry, of having that virtual hardware, as in our software-defined networks that are used throughout industry. We don't simply just use physical anymore, you know, gone are those days, even down to the basics of somebody using an Office 365 account, and of course, uploading to their OneDrive, for example, as well. So that needs to be considered as well, installing and configuring of the relevant physical or virtual equipment. Last but by no means least, the installation for option 3, which is the digital communications technician. We have installation and commissioning of the new computer or telecoms hardware. So again, hardware involved there. Apprentices need to be getting involved with the hardware, not just the software elements. Okay, so there are those duties there, quite important to use to make sure whether or not you are going to have a role that is suitable for that apprenticeship standard. So that's the end of the level 3. Any questions at all on level 3? I don't see anything in the chat. Has anything come through? Any questions from anyone? No answer, came a stern reply. Well, if you do, please feel free to use the chat, or if you want to later, of course, we will have another Q&A session just after the network engineer that I'm about to show you. Now, because we've gone through some of the concepts on network engineer of the layout, the new layout, we no longer have knowledge modules in the standard. We have an two assessment methods at the end. The portfolio is no longer officially marked. It's simply used as a platform of information to generate questions. Similar design. So on our network engineering standard that is revised, it's going through revision now, officially to be launched in June, as I say, very close. Again, as I mentioned earlier, security slightly updated, virtualization and cloud slightly updated and brought more into the fray with this standard. So a quick look at what IFATE say the role would be. Just one slide for this one, I'm sure you'll be happy. And it's fair to say this standard has had a nice review. It's had a refresh and an update, as opposed to being completely new standard like ICT is. So this really just has had a bit of a refresh and an update. And those of you that work in networking will probably agree quite rightly with the paragraphs that are on screen, and note that it's not changed too differently in wording to what we had on the previous standard. Types of roles and responsibilities we'd be expecting. Some titles here, and you know, some of these titles do have engineer. Now, it's worthwhile pointing out that this is a level 4 program. You know, some people say engineer is a degree only. Level 4 is the first year of a foundation degree. That is the level of difficulty and expectation we would be having with the apprentices. So it's not necessarily aimed for somebody with very little knowledge. That would be a level 3 ICT network technician. That's how you get the entrance to that standard. Then when you're going to really push forward in your career, you'd look to potentially move on to the level 4 network engineer. As I say, it's the first year of a foundation degree equivalent level 4, so it's quite difficult. Now, we do have 14 of those duties. So they are on screen now. As I've already mentioned, they're important to enable you to find the right seat and the right person for that seat. These will enable you to put your role together and sometimes enable you to think, well, actually, I may have to grant exposure for the apprentice via use of another team. And that happens, that's fine. You know, the standards are wide reaching and they're not going to be a 100% absolute fit to your company, you may have to have a look at what you're doing and think about a little bit of logistics to be able to support your apprentice throughout. But these duties are listed on IFATE's website, as I've mentioned before. You can use the tiny URL that's in the top of the screen, or as I mentioned, you can go to the Institute for Apprenticeships website and you can search and find this. This is the revised Level 4 Network Engineer. So there's the first 7 duties. The last 7 duties, no options in this standard. It's a straight flavored standard, are on screen. So expectation of working with hardware and software, both physical and virtual if required, all of course job specific skills, not simulation or just creating something. I say virtual, just creating something in a virtual environment to tick the boxes. Of course not, and nobody would do that. Nobody would even recommend that. What he means by virtual, of course, is using the technologies such as Azure, of course, AWS, Google, and using those facilities that are out there. What would this program look like then? Well, it's a little bit longer than the previous. You probably looked at ICT, went 16 months. Okay, this one takes a little bit longer. We're saying 24 months or up to 24 months to be able to complete. You know, it may take a little longer depending on certain scenarios, but the target that we have is that the apprentices will have completed their training by the end of 16 months. They will be then finalising their portfolios, completing all of the evidence that they require for that professional discussion, which is the same in this standard, and then we'll be using to go through endpoint assessment at the end. So how does it work? Exactly the same as before. Introduction, e-learning, assessment in a classroom if required. So on this one, if we're having foundation knowledge delivered, we will be using the CompTIA A+. No workshop in this one though. This is just to make sure we have a baseline of knowledge for apprentices. They'll do core 1, core 2, they'll pass the official paper just to make sure we understand that everybody has that same level of knowledge. Month 4 to 8, we'll move on to CompTIA Server Plus knowledge. So getting that server mastery, and we will of course be using the latest Server Plus that gets launched. Oh my word, it gets launched this week, of course. And that's the 005 version of Server Plus that will be coming out. So that will end up with CertMaster learning materials and labs on launch. I can't show you right now because it's not just yet launched for us. That's later on. And then followed by a workshop and again an opportunity to pass that certificate. You will get the opportunity to sit the actual exam, be that having a voucher once you've passed your mock to show that you're a certain level, having a voucher to go and sit at a local test centre to you, or indeed online. Pearson VUE offer online exams like many people have been doing via this pandemic. From that, we'll go on to CompTIA's Network Plus, fantastic qualification for networking, and a great qualification to get that broadens the knowledge far further and goes in a little deeper as well than what you will have learnt in the likes of the networking and comms section of A+. And then, of course, at the end, not to forget in any way, shape or form, the mastery of security. So we will look at the CompTIA Security Plus to be delivered there, again giving the opportunity to sit the exam as well. But we'll be using the mocks, of course, just to make sure you're ready for that and you have confirmed that you have that level of knowledge as required for your apprenticeship. Projects to follow in reference to you've had the knowledge delivered, go to the workplace and apply that knowledge and demonstrate it in your portfolio. So very similar as you've seen to the level 3 ICT, the same pattern as it was before. There will be delivery of an introduction, maybe by the learning mentor or an SME with the apprentices, or via video or live, depends when you're going to be doing it. E-learning, that could be on CertMaster Learn, it could be an e-book, so a variety of e-learning with lots of assessment methods within there, flashcards, multiple choice questions, just to really prepare you and check your knowledge. It's uber important, of course, to make sure you're prepared for that. Now, I've shown you the CompTIA flavour of what we've had there. for networking engineer, but not everybody chooses that particular route. We do have other flavors. Another flavor is a Cisco route. Now, the Cisco route will realistically require you to be working in a Cisco house. You need to be having full access to the Cisco equipment that's out there and being able to get exposure to that equipment. To that end, we do have prerequisites of having at least 6 months experience using those technologies, and definitely having a level 3 qualification or experience or equivalent before you start on this particular flavor. Even though it is a Cisco flavor, and those of you that have come into Firebrand and maybe had Dave treat you to some fantastic Cisco training, even Dave, who's a massive fan of Cisco, agrees with all of us that, you know, Network Plus is a great thing to have before you even tackle the CCNA. So as you can see, although it's a Cisco flavor, it is CompTIA as well. We still have the Network Plus in there as a fantastic foundation, if you would, for the standard. So that's a Cisco flavor. And of course, we are putting together a Microsoft flavor. Now, the way that things are happening at the moment with Microsoft, you'll know they are removing their certifications for products, and they're going down the role-based route. So we will be delivering server-based training. However, there may not be the opportunity for a Microsoft certificate at the end of that, but the training and the knowledge will be on par to what you would have normally expect, if not higher, from our dedicated Microsoft trainers that we have as well. So there are other routes available, but because just like on this particular flavor, you know, there's an expectation of being in depth using Microsoft Azure technologies, for example, we would require exposure as a prerequisite. So how's it assessed? The final element, not too dissimilar to what we've had before. So on ICT, our first assessment method was a portfolio to underpin a professional discussion. In this instance, it's the second. However, you can actually sit these assessment methods in whatever order is fit for you. We will work with you when it gets towards the end of the apprenticeship, where you will be sitting your assessments, and we would work with you to determine which is best for you and your employer and the facilities that you have. This particular standard, however, has an element of practical in the assessment. So there will be a simulated environment. It could be on facilities such as Cisco's Packet Tracer. It could be on facilities such as the practicelabs.com website. Any of them have worked with the apprenticeship standards as they are now and have completed the synoptic project practicals, you'll note that the simulation of a virtual environment is very similar. Now, what the apprentices will have in this instance, however, is 2 simulations. The first, or they're both network-based, of course, as you would expect, but one is for the performance of the network. One would be about a fault on a network. And the apprentices would get that scenario, go in and either repair or change or whatever they would have to do to meet the criteria as laid out on the instructions that the apprentices will get. They will go ahead, complete those 2 assessments, the practical little labs, if you would, and then similar to everything that we've been discussing, therefore, once that's been completed, there will be a questioning element to follow up after it. In this instance, about 45 minutes and a minimum of 10 questions. And that would be about both of the practicals, the fault and the performance element of it. So very similar, 2 main assessment methods, like on ICT and network engineer, 2 main methods, both of which require a portfolio to showcase the best work you can possibly do as an apprentice, and a discussion about that evidence that you collect. And then in this particular instance, we also have practical that we will need to work on. 2 little labs, simulations that we will work on to prove your skills, demonstrate how good you are and what you've learned. Then exactly the same as level 3 ICT, the independent endpoint assessment organization will go away, have a look at everything that they've got. And please note, for the employers that are working with the current standards, I didn't say anything about an employer reference. So I know sometimes that's been a bone of contention for people. That's now gone. We can use employer testimony to bolster, not replace, certain bits of evidence. which is great to have, but that old-fashioned reference that we had isn't there anymore as it used to be. So that's the end of network engineer. Very similarly laid out to ICT, very similar structure. Of course, we'd keep it that way if anybody was going to be graduating from level 3 up to level 4. It feels the same. So thank you for that. Anybody got any questions about anything that we've had thus far before we go to wrap up?
Thank you, Richard.
Oh, you're welcome.
So brilliant. That was brilliant. Really happy with that. So yeah, we've got about 9 minutes for a Q&A session now. If anyone has any questions at all, you can also email us at sprint@firebrand.com, which I will put in the chat now. If you have any questions, you want to get in touch with maybe an account manager or anyone else in our team.
I'm hoping that I've covered everything in as much detail that nobody has any questions, but if you do, please feel free.
Well, for future, for future. Anyone at all? Richard, any sort of advice you would give to a young apprentice starting out in ICT, sort of little things that aren't on the curriculum to keep an eye out for?
That hidden curriculum, as I call it. Absolutely, yeah, great question, thanks for that. If any apprentice or potential apprentices are out there and maybe considering apprenticeships versus university, for example, a lot of people often band around oh, well, yeah, apprenticeships are better because you're not going to end up with that big student debt. True, that's one bonus, but not only the bonus. The whole earning while you're learning is one of the best things you can ever do, because getting knowledge is one thing. Getting knowledge and then applying knowledge is second to none. That's how your brain works. You learn something, you use that knowledge to do something, and that learning sticks in your head far better. You know how to do it. You've learned how to do it, and you've done those skills to prove you can do it. It's fair to say sometimes compared to maybe, like say, going to college or university, you might know the same knowledge in theory, but you're not going to have that opportunity to showcase that knowledge. So I would say if anybody's deciding, do I do apprenticeships? I'm biased. I went to uni and I had an apprenticeship. I did an electronics apprenticeship in the steelworks. I'm from the Yorkshire area. When I very first started, when I left school, and I've done both of them, and I'm still uber passionate and state that, you know, apprenticeships give you that ability, as I say, to earn and learn, but also it's going to set you up for life. The extra skills that you have, that you learn, the communication skills while you're in the workplace and not in the student union bar, slightly different skill sets to have there, are invaluable, and especially what employers look for. It's something also to mention, when you complete your apprenticeships, you can actually go onto the register for IT technicians when you pass, and that register is a professional body that basically rubber stamps you as a competent IT technician, and that's regardless of which standard that you go on, to go out into the industry, and that's well respected throughout. If you're on the register, you're there. You know, not everybody that maybe has just studied in theory is going to be able to get on the register, or they're not going to be able to get on the register for a start. So yeah, if you're thinking about it, it's not easy. I'm not going to joke to you. You are working and studying at the same time, but as my granddad always says, nothing worth having is easy. So I would say go for it with an apprenticeship.
I'm going to dive in and ask you a question, because you've done so well today, and the others, I think I'm the last one left on here.
I see it. Hey, is that Dave?
Yes, Dave. Yeah, I'm a learning advisor at MTW in Maidstone. So we were looking at our Salisbury procurement list, and obviously we've got a large IT department, and some of the things that's interesting. Obviously, I'll be on next week to have a look at the cybersecurity ones.
Used to be mine as well.
So, and obviously was just looking at the network engineer level 4, because they're the ones we've got on our Salisbury Salisbury procurement list at the moment, although the level 3 that you spoke about before was quite interested as well. It was just one of the questions was around the exam side of things. So obviously you said about throwing in the exam. Is that the same with the 4 as the 3? So is it like a one shot thing with the 4 like it was with the 3, or is it an option?
It's the same, yeah. There's one crack at the whip, if you would, that is included. What that would mean is if for whatever reason, you know, the apprentice was unsuccessful on their first go, there would be a fee to pay for the exam. And to be clear, these exam fees cannot come out of your levy.
No, we've had this with accountancy ones as well. So this is why I'm kind of asking the question, where obviously sometimes the department will pick up the additional cost if there's registrations involved and things like that. One of the other questions I have is obviously your presentation is laid out really well, and I like the fact that you've got the off-the-job hours broken down where they would need to do that. Does this get sent out with that information? Because obviously I'm a learning advisor and I'm going to be trying to persuade our IT areas to be, so I don't pretend to know a lot of the stuff you're talking about, but obviously the content involved in this is obviously something of interest with the fact that it's been updated. So I think they probably would have looked at this probably about a year ago initially. So will you be sending out any links to information?
Yeah, so I am sorry to interrupt, just really quickly before you start, Richard. I've been recording this session, so I'm happy to send you this whole recording. Once
I think that would be useful.
Yeah, that suits. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no problem. I've got your details.
Yeah, there's plenty of support we can give you from other colleagues, and even if you need me to come and do something, answer any questions for anybody else, I'm happy to volunteer to do that as well.
Yeah, and I think obviously because of where you're situated, one of the things that would have been key would have been the actual remote learning side of things, so to be able to do that from distance. And I did like the idea of being able to see everything in the classroom as well.
Yeah, the cameras are really cool. They track the training.
Yeah, so that'll be something as well. But I just think for the detail involved and what sort of bits you're covering, that needs to be sent across to them to have a look at. So that would be handy if you can send us that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
No problem. And just as a little heads up, we're actually doing another webinar tomorrow morning, same time at 10 o'clock for cybersecurity. So if you're going to be working in cybersecurity as well, our subject matter expert, Phil Chapman, will be delivering the information on the cybersecurity technician and cybersecurity technologists that have been launched.
And that's tomorrow, is it? Because I got the invite for the one next week, I think.
Yeah. So there's networking and cyber tech this week, and then next week is data and software. So I can send you the link now on this chat. And even if you can't attend, if you just register for it, and I can send you the recording.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for facilitating this, Phoebe. Spot on. Thank you very much. I shall now go and get my landline installed.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Dave, for joining us, and thank you, Richard. And I'll pop the link in the chat.
Okay. Thank you. I'll get that before I leave.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.